My name's Hunter Wade at the Athletes Lounge podcast. I'm here with my guest.
Tim Young from Vincennes Lincoln High School.
So, Coach, just getting into it, you coach girls basketball over there at Vincennes Lincoln, and I know you lost your first game, but what do you think your outlook is, heading forward into the season?
Well, I don't think anyone has us on the radar. Number one, we lost two players from a team that we had 11 and 12 season, very mediocre last year. Had some nice games, but wasn't up to expectations. So we're pretty much under the radar. I think we're going to be a team that has to develop as the year goes on. We got a lot of younger players that we're putting in the mix. And so hopefully we proceed a lot better than we did on Tuesday night.
So what's the pressure, or what's the as a coach, what are you thinking about doing, or what are you trying to do to, I guess improve your team?
Well, our personnel is the biggest difference than what I'm used to since I've been at Lincoln. We haven't nearly been as deep. In my previous years when I was at Reveille, I basically developed players for a long time before I got into the high school job in the younger classes. So I brought a good nucleus of fundamentals into the program. That hadn't been the case at Lincoln. We've been pretty shallow depth-wise, lack of fundamentals, in my opinion, which may disagree with others, but that's my opinion. So we've had a tough struggle to get things rolling to like I want to, and I honestly believe we got a while to go to get there. But the group we have right now is younger. Even though we have four seniors, two of them start. But as the year goes on, I think we'll be more competitive.
So you mentioned that you don't think maybe the fundamentals coming up are as good as they could be. So is there any pressure as a coach to make sure the middle schools have some continuity at the high school going forward?
That's where our focus has been the last 3 years. Our numbers have been a problem, and we're down in the grade school and really promoting. And for an example, we have 35 girls signed up to start practice next week in the 6th grade. So we've got good numbers at the 7th grade, and we did a lot of recruiting at the 8th grade to get our numbers built up a little bit too. So numbers are coming, and part of that is the administration agreed when I was hired to bring back the 4th and 5th grade system, which it had been pushed away for the previous 10 years. And now we're in the 3rd year of that. And in our 4 grade schools, I think we have 9 girls basketball teams from the 4 grade schools. And I think we have 9 boys basketball teams. So we're working really hard, both on the boys and the girls side, to build the numbers and get Vincennes Lincoln basketball back to where it used to be 10 to 15 years ago.
So you mentioned that, your personnel this year is a lot different than what you had previously. So is there any adjustments, play style, coaching style you have to make to try to, I guess, fit your personnel more?
Yeah, I think you've been reading the newspaper. I've been typically over my years. I'm 84 feet, man to man, a lot of pressure defense coach, and I have not been successful implementing that at Lincoln High School whatsoever. And we're making major adjustments in that. My coach Chelsea Meeks, who played for me at Reveille, we did a deep dive into our personnel this summer and made an evaluation and really made some decisions that at the start I wasn't very comfortable with. But we're switching a lot from our man-to-man principles to a lot of zone principles. As the year proceeds, it's going to take some time, but our personnel just doesn't dictate to us to be able to play that full court man-to-man pressure that I'd really like to implement.
So you mentioned that you have a younger group. Does that lead to more optimism, knowing that your group is younger and they haven't reached their ceiling yet, so they can get better?
I think so. I mean, we're definitely led by two seniors. I mean, they're going to have to carry our load this year, but our younger players are going to have to develop and participate and really add to what we're trying to do for us to have success this year, not and in the coming years. I look for them to be there, but we need them to step up pretty quick and help us out this year.
You mentioned that you like full court, press defense, a man-to-man defensively. The what's your offensive philosophy like? What do you like to try to do on offense?
Typically, I've been a man-to-man motion offense. Um, we put a little more structure in this year than I like, because if you're going to play Bobby Knight, uh, motion offense, you got to have some fundamentals. You got to start with those young ladies at a young age to be able to set screens and learn to read screens, and that just hadn't been the case. And we're still in that developmental program, even though I'm in my fourth year, and it seems like we should have that developed. It just hadn't taken hold.
So you mentioned that you're not quite where you want to be, but is there any skill that would, if a girl has this skill, is more likely to get her playing time? Is there any skill
Yeah,
that you can?
in fact, our so-called marquee player, Ariana Gherkin, she'd been a volleyball player for her first 2 years of high school, basically, and just played basketball to be busy. And last December, she decided that she'd rather play college basketball than college volleyball. And so, we had to get really busy and find her a team to play with this summer, so she gets some exposure in a few events. And um, she's that type of young lady that really hadn't worked on basketball, but she's just an exceptional talent that she could probably go play any sport she wanted to, and be very successful. So Ari's a young lady that's coming in every day in practice and being a leader by example. And she's going to be a young lady that I think, even though she's a senior, I think we're going to see her growth as the year goes on.
So you mentioned that your numbers down the middle school levels are good. Uh, is what do you hope for? Who do you hope for to show up to tryouts each year? What's the number you're kind of in your head, wanting?
I I would really like to be around the 24 to 26 number at the JV and varsity level. And right now we're at 19. Last year we were 21. And I believe in my first year we were right there in that 19-20 number.
So is there any I guess not pressure isn't the right word. Is there any like uh thing where you go to volleyball games, go to softball games, see if any girls who aren't playing basketball, you can, kind of recruit into basketball?
Uh, do you follow me?
No, I did. It's just not. That's
Yeah,
why I don't.
I would say that you've got my script pretty well pegged. I attend as many junior high volleyball, junior high soccer. I attend the high school soccer, and I think I only missed one home game in the volleyball. And we recruit those young ladies uh, very hard, trying to get those athletes, because right now at Lincoln High School, the depth of our athletes, in my opinion, is kind of dwindled. Uh, we're not the same school we were 15 years ago when we had well over 1,000 students in the 1,100 number. We're down in the low 700s. So the athletes are not there, and we have to share athletes from one sport to the other. And I am a proponent of multi-sport athletes, and I want them to play those other sports. And right now, I have I think 3 or 4 girls that play travel volleyball, and 4 or 5 maybe that are playing travel softball still. And as long as they don't miss practice and or games, I'm not going to dictate what they do in their free time, because we have to share athletes, and that those travel sports are really putting a crunch on the numbers. And I think, in my opinion, I think that's part of the reason why we're seeing more and more high schools not have JV girls basketball teams. Numbers are becoming a problem across the whole state.
I agree, and I've talked to both Wrights and North Posey, who've had a little bit of a similar issue with the girls' numbers this year. The so yeah, it's not just a thing up in Vincennes; it's a thing in several places. The
Yeah, you can see that when you talk to coaches across the state, because obviously I'm one of the older ones, and you talk to coaches that's been in it for a while, and it's a real concern I have. Um, how I don't know that it can be regulated or I want it regulated, but we've just got to sell the idea that these young ladies can participate, and this idea that we have so many D1 athletes out there. I think that's a fallacy that some of these travel programs are selling that I'd have a complaint with.
the,
Very few D1 athletes out there that's going to get that D1 scholarship.
there's a finite amount of spots on D1 rosters. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. So, in your opinion, I was going to ask, I guess, two questions here. Which athlete or which sport do you think translates best to basketball? Girls soccer, well, of course, girls volleyball, or girls softball, or do you think? And then the second question was, why do you think the numbers have been dwindling so much? Recently, is it just kids dedicating themselves to one sport, or is it just even at a public high school, you have a lot of kids that just don't do any sport in there?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a real tragedy that we have so many young ladies and young men in high school that forego participating in anything, whether it's band, choir, or athletics. Those 4 years go by so quick, and I think they're very important. Uh, the second thing is I don't want to specify which sport is best because I don't want to alienate anyone. But the thing I think that especially we're missing out at a lot of schools is a female training program within the school, so that when we're sharing athletes from one sport to the next, we don't have that carryover. I lift. My student athletes lift during basketball season, even the day before a game. And so many of those athletes come from the other sport and they haven't done anything for 2 or 3 months. And
Yeah.
so basically, by the time I get them back, we're starting at zero. We've lost that, especially in the female athlete. So I think one of the things we're missing in some of those school systems, and I know there's systems in the area that have that in their high school curriculum, but I think missing that female training program is something that the school administrations should implement to help us out across the board for the female athletes. And your other question is dwindling numbers. I believe it's because basketball is a pretty difficult sport.
Yeah, it is.
When you're comparing softball and volleyball, and they're totally different, but to be in to compete in basketball, you have to be in pretty good shape, and you just can't lay your head on the pillow at night and through osmosis your body gets in shape. We have to run. We have to run. We have to jump. We have to do agility drills. And so basketball is difficult. And some of the athletes that we have today in our society just aren't willing to go that extra effort. You cannot coach, at least in my opinion. I cannot coach today like I did 5 years ago, let alone 10 or 20. That student athlete just won't tolerate that work that he has to put in to go to that next level.
You mentioned that basketball is maybe a little more difficult. Would you argue that some of the basketball is a lot more nuanced with the skills you have to learn and the skills you need to have to be able to play than maybe softball and volleyball?
I think, Hunter, you're absolutely right, because to excel, there's so many good programs out there, and to excel, you've got to have athletes with good skills. If they're not fundamentally left hand skills, right hand skills, whatever it be. You just got to be a multidimensional player to compete.
So you mentioned, we talked about the motion offense a little bit. Has there been any, I guess, to stop that question, let me ask another question. How tall are you as a team?
How tall are we?
Yes, sir.
Our tallest player is about 6'1", but she's a freshman. Other than
Okay.
that, we have about 5, 6 players in the 5'10" area. So
So,
of our players that see legitimate varsity time, we have no 6-foot players.
so is there a bigger emphasis on boxing out then because of maybe some of the being undersized?
Yeah, we have to rebound by committee, Hunter. We have to. Giving up offensive rebounds is just almost, if not worse, than making turnovers.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and offensive rebounds are pretty easy to lay back in at the high school level.
Lay back in and get an and one.
Yeah, kid reacts late and then coach is mad.
Yeah.
So, looking, you lost your first game, but looking forward into the schedule, do you think there's games that you can use as building blocks before sectional?
Oh yeah, being in the SIAC and with the schedule we have, it's very difficult. SIAC teams, as a general, there's very, very difficult, and you typically have the Castle and Memorial, and I think you'll have a couple of teams that surprise people this year. Wrights and Central will be a whole lot better, and I think Coach Epps will make a difference at Harrison the longer he stays there, also because he's going to continue to get some numbers.
So when
So
you have,
when SIAC prepares us very well.
when place like Wrights has a new head coach, what do you do to try to how can you game plan for that? Especially when it's so early into the season and you're not really, you don't have that much film to look at on them.
No, you got very little to nothing if you're trying to develop a scouting report, except for what you've seen the previous year. I was privileged to see Wrights play a couple of times this summer at Gibson Southern. Once they were down a couple of players, they were gone doing some other things. And another night, I think they were pretty fully loaded. And at that time, I thought they were one of the best 2 teams I'd seen all summer. Um, they have some very good athletes, and we know they have size, but their wing players are very, very good that will match up with most anyone. So we play them Saturday night, and we're gonna have to really play well to stay in the basketball game.
So would you argue these first few games at least are maybe even better to see what your team's like than all the scrimmages and stuff you do when you practice?
Oh yeah, after over the years, I've learned that after about that 6th or 7th practice to start the season, young ladies are getting very tired of Coach Young. Tim's overdoing things, and they just want to go play. So once you get past that time frame, if we played every third night, it would probably make them really happy. They'd rather do that than practice. And that to get to that point, that's why I think basketball season's way too long. I think that's another contributing factors to numbers. We stretched 22 games out over almost 4 months, and I think that's something that needs to be looked at along with the break between volleyball and basketball. Difference in the boys' side. If that athlete played football and they got beat the first week of the sectional, they got about 3 weeks before their first practice. Our young ladies got beat on Saturday in the sectional, and they had practice on Monday. I've argued that point with state administrators several times over my years. We either need to start volleyball earlier and at least have a week in there that those teams, 80% of the teams would get a week break after getting beaten the sectional. but that time frame just don't work out for them. And not having any time between those two sports, I think, is another contributing factors to numbers that we're seeing across the whole state of Indiana.
So as a coach, what is your biggest uh gripe, or what's the big, I guess, the biggest thing a player can do to immediately, I guess, get on your bad side for that, next few minutes?
Not show up for practice.
Well, yeah, that's a good one.
Number one.
I kind of meant in the game, in the game in terms of like,
Yeah. I'm not a good loser, Hunter.
no, that's fair.
I
That's
love
valid.
I love winning, but my number one thing, if we compete, I can live with it. And I would say that my biggest drawback from an individual is lack of competition in the game, just not competing at the level they're capable of doing. And every young lady that I put out on the court doesn't have that same level.
Yeah,
So
it
I guess
varies.
I'd be quick to go against the athlete that has that exceptional talent that's just getting by versus that young lady that's giving me everything she's got, but just doesn't have that potential talent level as the other young ladies. So that's probably my biggest drawback is those young ladies that just don't give that competitive edge day in, day out.
So you'd prefer a bunch of, I guess, gritty competitors, other than maybe someone that's more talented naturally, but kind of rolls over when it gets tough.
Yeah, well, you can't replace talent.
Yeah,
I mean, it's about like replacing. You can't make someone 5'6", 6'2".
yeah.
It just don't work. But yeah, I like those young ladies that go out and give you what they got, and you know what to expect day in, day out. They're my type of player. Those grindstone players, I love them.
So I think I know the answer to this, but do you prefer outside shooting, or do you prefer to try to get to the rim?
Uh, I was told a long time ago by one of my mentors that in girls basketball, the team that shoots most layups typically wins.
Yeah, yeah. The percentage goes up a lot at the rim in girls
Yeah,
basketball.
yeah,
What when you don't have much, you kind of know what your team looks like, and you kind of acknowledge that there has to be some changes made. Is there anything that, down to its core, you just don't want to change? Like, you want to keep it no matter what, in your game plan?
no, I I'm trying to adapt to the best I can to the athletes that I have. Being
What
stubborn in this sport is you can't do that anymore, in my opinion.
Anything that you see other coaches do at any level and kind of go, I'm going to try to implement that?
Oh yeah, we'd be foolish if we didn't try to
Yeah,
learn because they're very smart. Uh, I think women's college basketball is my best resource uh, to watch games. Uh, the men's side is more enjoyable to watch. Let's face it,
yeah,
because the athleticism, they can just jump over people. Where in female college, they have great athletes, but they have to be more conscious of executing on both ends to be able to score and stop other teams. So I think the women's college game is more fundamental than the individualism than the men's college game. So I take a lot from the men's college game and from Coach Moore at IU. One of my favorite women's coaches, Coach Walsh at Louisville. I think his strategy year in, year out, I enjoy stealing some of his plays as I take them off TV.
I will mention this, and you mentioned that how athletic men are sometimes, or the men is both in the NBA and college basketball. Sometimes people just do things athletically that they couldn't do again, and you see it a lot in college basketball where people do some. I mean, there's some amazing athletic plays that guys just did it. They couldn't do it again if they tried.
Yeah.
Just instinct and athleticism and length is on a lot of that, especially for things like dunks.
Female athletes have come a long way.
Yeah.
But there's still difference. But I like the pureness of the women's college game. I think is more enjoyable to me as a basketball coach to watch than the men's game.
And it feels like this this March, this women's March Madness had the most attention it's had in a while. Uh, don't know if that was LSU or Iowa driven, but they both drove a lot of eyes to the sport this year.
Absolutely, it's great. It's great, and hopefully that will bleed over and help us with our numbers problem in the state of Indiana.
You transitioned to my next thing was do you prefer to have your girls watching any type of basketball they can?
Absolutely, but they don't. I don't think they do, Hunter. I think that's part of the problem. Is very few of them have great basketball IQ. I won't say all of them, but there's a lot of other things for these student athletes to do, and watching women's college basketball on television is probably not a priority.
And I think that's a boys and girls coach statewide problem for people I've talked to. They just wish their kids watch more basketball, and I don't know why basketball isn't more of a viewing sport out, but it seems to be a problem.
Maybe we should have put it on Facebook or Twitter and play highlights 24/7 because they got their phone in their hand all the time.
Actually, you are right. The attention span seemingly has dropped off with each year of every year it graduates, the attention span goes down a little bit, and I guess maybe just watching a game on network TV is just getting a little bit too much. So then what's film when you watch film, what's that like with the student athletes? Because that's gotta be a change when now with what actually studying film has to be a little bit more of a challenge.
It is, and typically, Hunter, I haven't been one to watch a lot of film. In fact, I'd say until we get closer to the tournament, we watch very little to no film. Although we did watch about 10 minutes, 15 minutes of film yesterday from our poor defensive execution on Tuesday night. And that's an oddity. I typically don't watch a lot of film because that's yesterday. And we're more worried about today. And I think I correct those mistakes on the court easier than I can on film, because your point of attention span is, once they've seen it once, you show it to them the second time, it's really not sinking in that much, in my belief.
Basketball IQ is kind of hard to just attain. It's not like shooting. It's not like ball handling. It's not, I guess it is muscle memory, but it's not just something you kind of work on. What can you do to improve someone's basketball IQ, especially if they're not watching the game? Because a big part of basketball IQ is just understanding basketball and how basketball works. So what can be done to, help your team, especially because your team's younger, how their basketball IQ, I guess, improve?
When you figure that out, text me the criteria. Okay,
I'll put the research
I think we're all struggling with that, Hunter. I think you hit it right on the head. That's part of the. I think that's part of the difference from the elite teams to the average teams, even at the high school level. We still have those coaches that are getting those student athletes to buy in, and I think that's the teams that are having great success. They have those talented groups that they start with in the 6th and 7th grade, or maybe even younger, and those are the teams I think are successful. Forest Park girls, for example, last year, that group had been together for a long time. North Knox girls, South Knox girls this year, both those teams are going to be exceptional in their particular class. They just happen to fall in the same sectional. But those two teams to watch, they've got talent that came up together. And I think that may be the difference, and that's where the basketball IQ may fill in is the feeder program, and those young ladies have played for multiple years and learned a few things through some travel games
Is
as
that
a
the
team.
is that the benefit of now really putting effort into the lower levels is the more and more girls play basketball, and the more they understand the game, which therefore leads to better results at the high school level?
Sure hope so, Hunter. You know, we know obviously we won't keep 35 at the sixth grade. It's just transportation and game wise, but we'll keep at least 20 or 25 uh, next week when we finalize the team. Um, and we know attrition as time goes on. We're not going to get that many in high school, so we keep as many involved for as long as we can, because even though I don't like it personally, but we will have a lot of those student athletes by the time they get in seventh or eighth grade or even freshmen will try to specialize in an individual sport.
You winded down a little bit here. You're kind of cycling back to you being undersized. How do you plan on defending the post?
Uh, Hope.
I did.
No, we have some structure that we try to put in to try to defend the post. We have some very athletic young ladies that can sure help us in there, but we have to defend the post by committee because being undersized is a problem. And we play a lot of teams that's got good size, multiple 6 foot plus players. So we have to defend that post by committee and just hope that we can put enough pressure on the 3-point shooters to limit their percentage on that given night.
Yeah, I didn't know if it was going to look like fronting the post or just rushing the ball when the post player catches it, or
Yeah, yeah, all the above.
yeah, which
Whatever
I
we
get.
have to do, and it adjusts from uh, possession to possession.
So when you play a bigger team, I guess your hope is when outrun them, outwork them, out hustle them, because the height difference sometimes leads to a drop off in speed. Uh, so is there a bigger thing to get out in transition when you can against a team that's bigger?
You hope to, and we started off that way on Tuesday night, but our players that just aren't conditioned enough, and we got a couple of young ladies in foul trouble and limited our rotation. And so, best laid plans, yeah, that sounds really great on paper, but when things don't work out, it makes it more difficult.
So I see that picture behind you, and I take it you're a state champion.
Yes,
The So what's the biggest?
2011.
Yep.
I've been privileged to play on that stage or coach on that stage 5 times.
Yeah. So what's the biggest, takeaway from those teams that you try to put into, your current teams? Is it just, is there anything that really has stuck around and, you be able to use year in, year out, to, great success?
What I hope it's my motivation uh, to motivate players, and I'm still trying to gain that respect at Lincoln High School to motivate, because I'm a firm believer to get players to their full potential. You have to earn their respect, and respect is earned.
Yeah.
It's not given, and I think the difference, if I had to point it out, is the teams that I was privileged to coach at Brevet. I had some great young ladies, but we started them all young. The group that went to the state finals 3 years in a row and finally won in 2011, I started with that group when they were in third grade. And so we brought that team into high school. And then every year, Paula Westfall and I ran clinics, and we just kept those younger groups coming in. At Brevet, we only have one gym. And so I ran clinics every Sunday from about 12:30 to 5:30. from kindergarten through 8th grade. And so we had those young ladies coming in, and they were excited about it, and they knocked the door down. They were waiting for me to open the door because winning breeds excitement. And right now, I haven't been able to establish that quite yet, but we're working really hard on it, and I'm not ready to give up on it yet.
This is my last question. What's the feeling like when you win state? Especially for a group like you kind of grew up with.
Well, probably the hardest one was getting beat in Lucas Oil Stadium the first time we went in 2009. We lost in overtime with a group of sophomores because my best player, who coaches with me now, Chelsea Meeks, was out for the season with an ACL. So we started 5 sophomores that year. That was probably the toughest one. But to see that group get there and finally overcome in 2011 after they lost in 9 and 10 in the state final, it was a climax. And that if I'd have really been smart, I'd have walked away with a lot of other coaches that quit when they won state championships. But that was great. The trips back after that group 2 more times was fantastic. Those groups overachieved, and then right up there, there's nothing like playing on that stage for a student athlete. And I wish that I would had the ability to give every young lady I coach that opportunity. But we all know that's not possible. But that's my wish, to see their face when they go up that ladder and cut that net at the sectional and the regional and the semi-state. Obviously, you don't get a cut at the state, but that's all worth the time. No amount of money to coach compares with that look. Even the student athletes I was privileged to coach at Lincoln, when we upset Washington in the 22 sectional, that was right up there also, to see those student athletes come back and upset, a very good Washington high school team.
Once Zoom's going to kick us off, do you mind if I invite you to a second one so I can wrap up?
Yeah.
Yep. Thanks.
Hey guys, this is Hunter with the Athletes Lounge podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe where you can. Thanks.